Hello and welcome in to everyone that's joining us today at the American Ultra Stock channel. Thank you so much. Braden and I today bringing our analysis on a new candidate that just emerged. He was employed as of yesterday, but now Patrick Vieira, the Arsenal legend, has been linked heavily with the USMNT. Braden, your initial thoughts? Whereas the last one we talked about, Southgate, ticked all the boxes, this one may not. What do you think?
Well, the other news that came out today from the coaching report is that, well, it came out officially. There had been rumors from other sources, but from official sources that it came out that U.S. Soccer is looking for a European candidate, someone who they don't want an American. They want someone with heavy experience at the European level, which is interesting because Vieira doesn't really have that. It's also interesting because he was actually asked in an interview about the USMNT job and the opening a couple days ago, and he was like, "My full focus is at Strasbourg," and now all of a sudden he's out of a job, and there's heavy rumors. Even Fabrizio Romano's tweeting about it being a possibility. Honestly, it seems to be moving very quickly, even more quickly than the Southgate news was. I think it is a real possibility that we do end up with Vieira as our head coach, which I don't really know how to feel about it. I think it's similar to Southgate in terms of the level of manager, not in terms of like their play style or their experience, completely different levels. But it's just kind of a meh option for me. It's a little inspiring because it is true to USSF's word, a European manager who has experience in the top five leagues. But it's also someone with MLS ties, so they're kind of getting a loophole there, going MLS without going MLS. And it's someone who hasn't really had success anywhere. I mean, we'll get more into his very short managerial career a little bit later in the video, but I don't know. He just hasn't really been convincing anywhere for me. At least Southgate does have the results to back up his pedigree, I guess, with England, despite a lot of criticisms on how he plays. He has the results to back him up. Vieira doesn't really have that as of yet.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'll be honest. I think that this is a MLS level coach that somehow got put into the mix. And I think that, well, I'm not defending Southgate right here. He's not my number one option. But if I was underwhelmed by his name being thrown into the mix, Vieira, for me, I'll be just honest. For me, I'm very adamant on saying it's disappointing. I think that this is the most special and important cycle in our history. And we're going for a guy that has no proven history in an European tournament, well, international tournament. And he has a very small sample to look from and never really had success. Judging on that, we have to talk about the most recent job that he had. He was at Strasbourg, as we said, as of 2 days ago when he gave that interview that he was completely focused. Well, now he's not there anymore, but what do we have to analyze, Braden? Judging from how he did, your takes on how he played and the results, ultimately, was it a sack, was it not? What do you think?
Well, if we're just going based on Strasbourg, there's not a lot to analyze just because he was only there for one season. And in his defense, the Strasbourg, I think, as we all know, are owned by Todd Bowley and whatever Chelsea's football group is called. I don't remember the name, but they're basically owned by Chelsea. There wasn't a lot of investment into Strasbourg last year. I expect this season it will be different, which maybe you can argue is a little bit harsh on Vieira because they didn't really have the strongest of teams last year. But at the same time, they were towards a relegation battle for the majority of the season. Ended up finishing 13th, which isn't horrible necessarily, but it's also not inspiring, especially since they finished as high as sixth just two seasons before that. It's just not really anything to write home about. It's not horrible. It's not like necessarily something that he absolutely needs to be sacked, but it's also not something that gives you confidence that he's the guy for the future. And I think that's kind of Strasbourg's thoughts, and I guess probably Chelsea's thoughts as well. He wasn't the guy for the future. They're going to go in a different direction. I expect the team to be a lot better, so we'll see how they end up doing next season. Hopefully they have some Americans in Caleb Wiley and Gabriel Slonina, fingers crossed. But I think we have to look further back if we're going to really analyze his managerial career because, as I said, it's really not that long. I mean, before the Strasbourg job, he had the Crystal Palace managerial job, and he was just, again, very mid. He finished 12th in his first season, and the club ended up finishing 11th in his second season, but he was sacked towards the end of that. He was a little bit lower in the table, and if you look at how Palace are doing now with a pretty similar team, Glasner has them working wonders, looking like they could challenge for European football next season, which is not something even close to what they looked like under Vieira. I will admit, at the time, I didn't really understand him getting sacked, especially when they brought back Roy Hodgson immediately after. It didn't really make sense, but the vision that the club had seems to have worked out, and I think we'll see kind of a theme of managers doing better with the same club after Vieira leaves, which is a little bit concerning. I mean, if you look at his job before that, his first experience in a top 5 league with Nice, finished 7th in his first season, 6th in his second, but that's an asterisk because it was a shortened season due to COVID, so you can't put too much stock into that really. It was very low in the table in his third, ended up getting sacked in December. They finished 9th overall, and that's even with him dragging them down. And then the season after that, they finished 5th. So again, another example of the manager after him coming in and doing a better job with the same squad. And then finally, if we look back, we've already mentioned it, he's basically an MLS manager. He started his managerial career in MLS with NYCFC, and he did have pretty solid finishes in at least the league table, but never made deep playoff runs. And we all know MLS, for better or for worse, what matters is your runs in the playoffs. I don't think that's how a league should be formatted, but it's just something you have to live with as an MLS manager. And the fact of the matter is, he didn't do too great in terms of the playoffs. And then as soon as he left, a couple of years down the line, the club did win MLS Cup. There's a heavy asterisk next to it because in the semifinals, they played a Union team that didn't have their entire first team because of COVID. And I mean, in the final as well, there weren't as many fans as there should have been because of COVID, of course, but they still won MLS Cup. They still got the job done. It's something that Vieira hasn't been able to do. He hasn't had any inspiring results, just kind of passable.
Yeah, this is what I think as well, because I'll be honest, he hasn't really done well anywhere, and I think he tends to be a little bit stubborn. When he was at Palace, I really like Palace. It's a club that I sympathize with. It's kind of similar to my club that I support. So when I saw that he was going, I remember they just tied every single game, kept on tying and tying, and it was crazy. I don't recall it exactly. I saw someone posted it was 12 matches without a win, but I think it was 7 draws and then 5 losses, which is not necessarily the worst in the world. But then you look back to your first point on how he is as a manager per manager, I don't think he really, when you said that compared to Gareth Southgate, I think he is in that bracket of managers that they don't really have the creativity to them make the team win a game based on their tactics. They'll just maybe to try to extract what they have from the players, but I don't trust Vieira to be able to do that. I think there is a reason why Strasbourg is basically parting ways with him now that they're going to have more investment. There's nothing to back him up, and if he wasn't Patrick Vieira, the player, I think he was never going to get the jobs that, or even linked to the USMNT, in my opinion. If you look, there's an argument right there that Nancy has a better career as an MLS coach than he has had. So I think that, he did win a World Cup as a player, has experience there, but that was ages ago. It's completely different. And it brings us to our next point right here, which is the final take. Do you think that this would be an acceptable moment for an acceptable decision? Because like we said in the beginning, Southgate, for better or for worse, he has the results to back him up, and he ticks all the boxes. Now Vieira misses a couple of those. Do you think, would you be happy with this one, 1 through 10? How would you grade it if he was to become the USMNT coach, which looks like he could be?
I think if this was just an ordinary cycle, I'd be perfectly fine with it. I mean, he's a young manager. We have a young team. It seems to fit well. And I think most importantly, we need a manager who isn't going to let the players push him around. And Vieira has the reputation as a player and as a manager as well. He's not going to take anything from the players. He's going to put them in their places, which is good. I think that's the one thing that you can look at Vieira, besides maybe his age and the fact that he still has most of his career ahead of him. Those are the two positives that you can look at it. But I think there are a lot of very valid concerns. For one, his results seem to get progressively worse the longer he stays on at manager. I think we've seen this at every single club. The club just seems to do worse and worse every season until he eventually is sacked. And that's another thing. He gets sacked very soon. He's only made it over 2 years, which is the amount of time we have left in this cycle before 2026. He's only made it over 2 years at one of his 4 jobs. And it was in MLS, which you can't really put much stock into, especially since, and I'll get to, and this is ties into my final concern. When he was in MLS, it was actually the same time as Jesse Marsch. They were rivals in the Hudson River Derby. If you guys follow MLS, that's NYCFC versus New York Red Bulls. Marsch was managing Red Bulls, Vieira managing NYCFC. Marsch owned him every single time in a rivalry game, and it wasn't even close, really. I mean, if you look at the results, I think Vieira's team scored 11 goals, Marsch's team scored 24, including a 7-0 win. In a rivalry match, that's cause for sacking as it is. And I think even that, the fact that he's not even at the same level as Jesse Marsch, and maybe you can talk about the level of the squads, but I think it just makes our decision to hire Berhalter back instead of Marsch just look that much worse when you consider that the options we're looking at now probably are worse than Marsch. And this is supposed to be our ambitious hire. Last time, we all know we weren't ambitious. This time, it's supposed to be different. But I think if you look at the whole body of work, you take out the name Patrick Vieira. If it was just a random French guy instead that didn't have any history as a player, as a legend, I think you have to look at this and think it's very, very underwhelming.
Yeah, I agree. I think that great players becoming great managers, I mean, we all know it's a very small sample of those. And I don't think that Vieira is one of those. I think he would have done at least something sort of significant up until now if he showed any signs that he would be a promising manager. And like you said, if it was, let's say, 2026, we just got out in the group stage or whatever, and we need to rebuild things. And let's say we got to a quarter and then we're going to get a new guy, I'm fine with it. But 2 years, no competitive matches up until then. We need someone that has been at the helm and has had all the pressure of an international tournament such as the World Cup. This is a guy to build a project on, not a guy to take on the wheel and steer the squad into a good campaign. So this is why I would say it's a really bad appointment. I don't really trust him. I think honestly we're all in the dark, which is very, very underwhelming in my opinion. And most of the fan base is okay with it, which I'm a little bit surprised because we had the power. I would like to imagine the fan base put the pressure for Berhalter to be gone, and now it seems like the standards for the next hire aren't as high. It's okay. We got rid of the guy, so it's fine with whatever. On that note, I would like to ask you guys that are watching, what do you think about this appointment? Would you be happy with Patrick Vieira? As you said, as you guys have seen, Braden and I, we gave our takes. Final takes, Braden, any last things that you want to say about this assignment or any names that you want to suggest and ask the viewers if they would like for us to cover as possible options?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on one thing quickly that you just mentioned. I think the fact that the standards for Berhalter were so low, I mean, they were below the ground, basically. I think just that has kind of let most of the fan base believe that any manager will be an upgrade. And I do agree with that. I think basically any manager would be an upgrade. The problem is we're not just trying to upgrade on Berhalter. We're trying to make a real statement in 2026. We're not trying to go from a group stage exit to a round of 32 exit, or from a round of 32 exit to a round of 16 exit. No, we're trying to make the quarterfinals, semifinals, make a real statement at home, a statement of intent, a statement for the future. Because I mean, I'll keep going back until to Berhalter's original point, his original goal, change the way the world views American soccer. If we underwhelm at home in the World Cup, it's gonna change the way the world views American soccer for the worse. And I didn't even think that was possible before Berhalter took over. I mean, we've already been the laughingstock of the world in terms of this sport for so long now, and we're finally getting maybe not a golden generation like we originally thought, but we're finally getting a generation that is competent, that has the quality in all areas of the pitch or most areas of the pitch to overachieve and make a real run with the proper manager at the helm. And I think it's just going to keep getting better in the future. I mean, if you look at some of our youth national teams, the results they get, they're always a little bit misleading, but all the prospects we're creating both here and abroad, the dual nationals as well, are a huge part. It's just going to keep getting better. And I think our standards just need to rise. We're not the same USA that we once were, the same USA that was barely qualifying for World Cups in the past, that wasn't making any runs, didn't even qualify in 2018. It's a completely different team, a completely different player pool, and we should have completely different goals for the program. We need to take this seriously and really aim high, because if we're not aiming high, I mean, what's really the point of any of this?
Yeah, there's no outcry, and this is my last point. There's no outcry from the fan base of a select names, select a pool of names that these are the guys that we want. And if reports came out and fans were adamantly against it right away, that we need something better, I'm pretty sure we could have some influence on the next appointment, but it doesn't look like it will happen. So if it does end up being Vieira, I hope he helps us, because you mentioned on the last time around when we had this tournament at home, we took Brazil. We gave a really difficult game against Brazil. They ended up winning the World Cup. Do I think that Vieira will be able to steer us to doing something remarkable like that? Well, I guess we'll find out if he does get appointed. So let us know what you think. If you think there are any other names we should be looking at, would you be happy? Would you be against this one? Do you think that maybe we should be positive because maybe he turns out to be a great international manager? Any hopes that we can cling on to at the moment? So make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time.